Welcome back to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb in Real Estate Show. Got questions about perennial flowers? What about issues with closing on your newest property? Give him a call at 727-254-7127. That's 727-254-7127. And now your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
And I am Stan DeFreitas, and you are?
And I am James DeFreitas, and we are here each and every week. This show gets aired on AM 860 on Saturday nights at 8 p.m. And it also re-airs on Sunday mornings at 8 a.m. And, of course, we do try to get it up on Facebook Live and YouTube Live, and we've had limited success with that, but it looks like it's either a Wi-Fi issue or sometimes I think the apps themselves, these, you can't really expect billion-dollar businesses to create apps that actually work correctly. But we do our best to try to work with what we got. And so it is challenging in that respect. So
I understand. Got a question for you.
All right.
And since you're the broker for the agency, when precisely does a calendar day end?
When does a calendar day end?
We're talking real estate, of course.
5 p.m.
Well, it says, as a reminder, when interpreting contracts, it's always important to read the term in their entirety to ensure there's no specific language that alters the general deadline.
Right.
That said, if you read the contract to its entirety and are confident that the only guidance it gives is calendar day, so we'll quote the calendar day, here's the definition would be a calendar day begins at midnight, 12 a.m., and ends 24 hours later the following midnight.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about end of business day, what's typically considered an end of business day.
I think for a real estate point of view, if it is not specified in a contract, then you would kind of...
And a lot of times it is specified at,
sure.
Tell me by,
boom.
Tuesday at 4 o'clock, this offer is good until that such and such time, because you don't want people to have to think about what it might be. Because now we're getting back into the sphere of, do I have to contact a lawyer to find out what a day is? But yeah, that's a good question.
So it reverts back to that if it isn't specifically written in the contract, and I think that's important. And you do get people out there sometimes what I call tricky. They're trying to get tricky on you.
Trying to get tricky.
They'll try to say, hey, no, a day isn't a day, or a time isn't a time, or going to see the property. I had somebody supposed to come to a closing. They never came to the closing. They went to the house, threw stuff all around, in my opinion, and said, look at that.
Right.
There's stuff everywhere.
And was a lawyer and was also let in by a real estate broker who let them into the property to mess up the property in order to create the conflict.
Yeah.
And
one I don't think should probably be a real estate agent, and the other was was disbarred at one point.
Ambulance chaser.
So it makes you wonder. I won't say names because that way, there's no, would never do that. But I do find there are some great attorneys and great real estate people, and then there's the ones we worked with sometimes.
Well, yeah, and again, one of the things I would say too in doing, when you work kind of in the auction space, when you're doing real estate auctions, one of the most tricky environments that we get into, or one of the most, and this happens a lot, you're dealing with people who are mentally more stressed than usual.
Right.
Selling a property is stressful as in and of itself. When at the best of times, it's stressful. But and the other thing we don't always know either, and this happens for any real estate person out there, and if you're new to the business, and even seasoned professionals as well, you don't know if you're dealing with a client that has a mental illness. Maybe they served in the military and they came back different.
Right.
You just don't know what you're dealing with. And the other thing I would say too, there's different definitions for the same type of thing that are going on. And one of them is there's a concept out there that should be very it should be universally understood, but it isn't. Okay, and one of the things that I've found out is that the term motivated seller, that means something very different to every seller out there. Now, my definition of a motivated seller in the real estate auction space is somebody who understands that if they don't sell it, they're probably going to lose the property because they've over leveraged themselves, or they put themselves into a position that's bad and you're going to lose it. Now, certain sellers will have the idea that they're a motivated seller, that they want to sell something because, well, if I sell this, it'll allow me to do a better deal somewhere else. That's not really my definition of a true motivated seller. That's somebody who's motivated to a point.
Right.
But one of the things that makes it more challenging in the real estate space when you're doing auctions is you are talking about people that may be getting a divorce. You may be talking about people who have to leave quickly on a relocation kind of scenario, and they need to sell, get out, and it doesn't matter how the profit margin, I got to get out, got to go, because there's a timing issue. So, that's, now you would say to yourselves, well, geez, I would just go and, and hit one of these make an offer now, pages. Okay, you could do that, but you won't do better doing it that way. You'll just be getting a flat rate and done and out. So if that's what you want, that's fine. And there are services out there, plenty of them, that will do that, where they'll just give you 20% under market value all day long and you can cash out real fast.
I see more and more of this.
Right. And it's nice for certain people that don't want to put up with the hassle of having showings and stuff. I get it, but again, even in the real estate auction space, we typically do one open house and we have the auction usually 30 days and it's done. Now it depends on the property. There are some certain specifics where things change, but that's typically how it would go. And, and then the number one question is, well, how would I know when to use you? That's probably the number one question that we get when we talk about this type of service. And it's like, well, you'll know because the seller's looking at you sideways going, hey, you've had this property for a while. What's going on here? What are we doing? And the worst answer you can have is, I don't know, because they expect you to know. Okay. And if you don't know, that means you didn't think about that contingency, which means you now need to think about that contingency. And that's going to happen more and more as we go down this path of having higher inflation and properties that are sitting on the market longer.
Well, no one can tell you exactly what a market's going to do. You can project what you think it's going to do. You can try to anticipate, but markets are fluid. I mean, it's like...
Well, I mean, you have some good idea. I mean, they passed this anti-inflation act the other day, and so far as I can tell, and this is universally true, most of the time when I see whatever party's in power, when they try to pass something and they name the thing that it's trying to do, it usually does the opposite of the thing that was intended for it to do.
Yeah. Well, I saw Bernie the other day came out and said, I don't think it's going to do anything.
Right, and that's bad when you have somebody who is very socialistic in his viewpoints. And that's not a knock on him. He literally calls himself a democratic socialist. So I'm taking him at his word that that's what he means.
Sure.
So if he doesn't think it's going to do anything and he's not even excited about it, then I'm not sure it's a big win for their party.
Sure.
So yeah. So and again, not to be too political, but I do think that we can state some of the obvious things that are happening in the real estate space, and I'm not sure that particular thing is actually going to make homes more valuable. I mean, part of the reason we still haven't seen much of an effect is the only thing that's been changed in the last 6 months is the interest rate has gone up, somewhat significantly. I mean, but we were at zero. So,
yeah.
Something over nothing is something, so, there's, that to contend with. And the other thing I would say too, is that we still have a supply problem. We don't have enough affordable housing being built. Now, there are plenty of construction companies out there that are building multi-million-dollar homes for that market. But we don't have enough. I would say we don't have enough $300,000 to $400,000 homes being built in Pinellas County or Hillsborough County or probably any county in Florida for that matter. And I think that's where we have a real problem, is that we don't have enough supply of affordable homes going in. And, and we also have to make it to where I personally think we should consider making Florida residents be able to compete with cash buyers from out-of-state buyers, okay? And because I think it's a crying shame to live here in Florida, to be born and raised here, have a good paying job, and not be able to afford real estate in the county and or city that you live in.
Well, that's an interesting concept, and I think that's probably a good one, but you'll have to propose that to some legislators.
Right, and I have no authority whatsoever, and I'm sure if proposed incorrectly, it could sound like I was just trying to be an outright socialist, which isn't at all what I'm trying to do, but it's universally accepted. I mean, it's funny to me, you propose socialistic ideas, and there are certain components that are universally accepted on both sides of the aisle. Okay, one of those, of course, is being in-state tuition for colleges.
Right.
So that gives preferential, pricing for college students that have invested themselves in the state that they're in. Okay, so we acknowledge that we do that. Most of the people I meet on the right love the NFL, but the NFL largely is governed by socialistic principles with salary caps, unlike MLB, okay, where they can only spend X amount, okay, and that's it, and they have caps, okay.
Right.
And the other thing that the NFL does too that I think is interesting, but again, an accepted socialistic principle, which is that if your team wins the Super Bowl, well, next year you'll get all the crappy picks.
Well, they're trying to equalize it out more.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I understand.
Well, that's the whole principle behind it, right? They're trying to make it more fair.
Right.
And, and then the buzzword is equitable, but that's being abused the other way too, in my opinion. So I think that's being overused and abused to mean something entirely else than just being fair. So, but anyways, those are just weird off the tangent thoughts that I have that are related to real estate, but kind of go down a, Alice in Wonderland hole.
Rabbit hole. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think that, with real estate in general, we can give you some ideas. It's fluid, it's changing. And
but nothing's really changed. I mean, the prices, as I quoted in the Realtor magazine, are up. I mean, 22, 23% from year over year. The prices are up 22 to 23%, depending on if it's a single family home and what county you're in. So they're still up, okay? And we still have people buying, and we still have lots of competition.
But you're all seeing more open houses.
Yep.
Looks like agents are having to work at it a little bit more than just being an order taker. And I wonder, for some agents that have never been through some downtimes in the past, like we have,
they're in for a rude awakening.
It could be different. It could be different. The market is going through a change.
Oh, it
as we
definitely
speak.
is. It's definitely going through a change, and it's one that, it's going to take. Now, I think Florida's a little more insulated, because we've got the beach and the sand. Whereas up north, you've got the snow and the wind. And so if you enjoy that, then you're happy. But here, we've got something that they don't have, and natural weather phenomenon. But anyways, we are going to go take a break. Don't touch that dial, and I'll let you send it away.
Continue to stay with us as the Plant Talk Real Estate Talk continues here on AM 860, The Answer.
Interested in having a home consult? Remember, you can reach Stan at 727-423-4794 or on the web at askmrgreenthumb.com. Welcome back to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb and Real Estate Show. Connect online at askmrgreenthumb.com. Got questions about gardening, real estate, or both? Give them a call at 727-254-7127. That's 727-254-7127. And now your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
And I am Stan, and you are?
And of course, I am James DeFreitas, and we are here every Saturday evening at 8 p.m. and every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. So you have lots of ways to get a hold of us if you want to listen on the radio show. If you are, driving around in the car, or if you're at home, of course, on AM 860, their website, The Answer, you can also pull it up and listen live that way. We also do put these up on YouTube and on Facebook, so you can go to Stan DeFreitas on Facebook, and you can watch us when you can watch previous live segments, and of course you can go to Ask Mr. Greenthumb and on the YouTube page, and you can pull us up that way as well. So lots of ways to listen to us, and of course your favorite podcasting website, you can download us from that as well. We're on most of the major ones, and so
like Apple and some of the others.
Yeah, Apple Podcasts, and we're on that one for sure. And so we've got you covered. Any which way you want to listen to our content, you can do so. Any
which way but loose. Got a question for you.
All right, another question.
Another question here in real estate, since it says, I am a broker owner of a real estate brokerage corporation.
Okay.
My company maintains several escrow accounts. A friend who is also a broker indicated that I'm required to send the monthly escrow reconciliation statements to the Florida. We'll have to find the next page on that. Page 16. So we go over here and let's see. Here, where are we at? Above. Okay. No, where is the ending on this thing?
I have no idea, but I kind of get where they're going with the question. And,
right.
Yes, brokers can maintain an escrow account, but I don't know why you'd want to, because then you are required to send in the reconciliation statements into, I'm sure it's going to tell you it's FREC.
Yeah, it says I'm required to do so. It says, no, there is no requirement to send FREC the monthly escrow reconciliation statements. Rule 61.J2, boom, boom, boom. Florida Administrative Code requires that each escrow account be reconciled in writing at least once a month.
Okay. So there is a reconciliation requirement.
But does not state that those monthly escrow statements must be sent to FREC. So in other words, you got to do it, but you don't have to send to FREC because FREC probably doesn't want the extra paperwork.
But it's a cost to have these accounts, okay? And,
sure.
and one you don't want to get caught with.
Not enough money.
Well, and the other big issue in
or too much money.
Or the other issue of having commingling issues.
Yes, if you start putting your money and the house money and the rent money all in the same account,
that could be a problem.
You could have a problem because the money is supposed to be kept separate. And the reason people do that is there have been people who have commingled their money, and then all of a sudden they go, oopsie, well, I paid for the rent and I paid for the trip to Bora Bora.
And a lot of attorneys have gotten into trouble too when they manage accounts that aren't theirs, and they start robbing Peter to pay Paul, and the next thing you know, they're having trouble on that end when they get caught.
It's almost like a Ponzi scheme sometimes. I'm borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, and that's not how it's supposed to be set up.
Right. So my advice there is you could do the escrow thing if you want, or you can just have a defined separation of church and state and allow title companies to handle everything in that space.
And that's the reason many companies do that.
And that's what I think most people should do. Now, that doesn't mean you can't own the title company too, but now the title company is now a separate and distinct entity from yours. And again, if you're a smart real estate broker, then broker owner, one of the things you'll have is a policy in place that you let the client know, both the selling side and the buying side know, that you have an affiliated brokerage disclosure form that shows that, yes, this is something that is still going to profit from on this other end of the business, but you're letting them know. When you don't let the consumer know, then they're in a position of ignorance, and it's not a good look, and it's illegal. So you have to let people know that who they're doing business with. That's one of
it makes sense.
It makes perfect sense.
So you're kind of saying we're joined, but we're separate, but we're letting you know that we're under the same thing. In other words, I couldn't send you to China and say, go to China and represent me, kind of, and I'll set up meetings in the back of a White House for you to give you money, that wouldn't be too good.
I'm
if I
pretty sure it's pronounced Gina, but okay.
If I said, here's, I don't know, let's say $50,000 a month, even though you don't know anything about, let's say, an oil company, it really shouldn't look too.
What if I'm good at art, though?
Well, yeah, well, then I guess
if I'm good at art,
if I pay for your art, then you don't have to know a lot about oil.
Yeah. It is. I mean, again, not to be too political, but it is. Whatever your feelings are on Trump, I mean, I personally don't care that his compound was raided, but I do think it is ironic that that's being investigated over what it sounds to me, from what I can hear, it sounds like that's being investigated over presidential archive material, which seems odd to me, because to me, this has been done before in the past, and usually it's done in a very quiet manner and not necessarily in the same public way. But I do think it's odd that we're investigating that, but we don't seem to. The FBI doesn't seem to be interested in investigating Hunter Biden's laptop or his connection to Ukraine and who's buying the artwork. I mean, everyone that buys it is buying it anonymously.
And yet, when people will come back, they'll go, "Well, the same justice is for all."
Yeah. Well, it doesn't feel that way. And again, one of the things that I,
not to get political, but
and again, one of the things I would say too is this has been brought up by other members in Congress too. Be careful what you do when you're the party in charge, because would you want it done to you when you're not? And I think that's something that both sides need to think about before they decide to ratchet it up and to go after one another. And I'm not necessarily saying that in this case there couldn't be some actual wrongdoing being done. I'm not saying that. I will at least reserve judgment. But if you find nothing and you did this just to do this, then I don't like that. And I think that it doesn't look good.
Well, the government shouldn't be politicized,
No.
any branch of it, and I'm sure that it has been done in the past.
Yeah.
But that should be separated.
And I didn't particularly like it when James Comey was investigating Hillary Clinton 6 days before the election. I didn't think that was appropriate either. And then to make a public announcement of that 6 days prior to everyone voting, I thought that was bad.
Sure. So, to show both sides. Oh,
yeah.
Well, even going back to J. Edgar Hoover, he did a lot of snooping on a lot of people for his own political, nesting, if you will. And he would use it and share his information to discredit people. And that's kind of questionable that, not just kind of, to me, it's very questionable that anybody at that position should be using their power.
He stayed in power a long time.
Well, because he had the goods on a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And that makes you wonder, that's not what the system is for. And yet, as a kid, you couldn't wait to get your FBI little badge because those were the good guys. Well, yeah, and maybe not.
Well, again, being good and bad is a point of view,
I guess.
But no one ever thinks they're the bad guy.
Sure. No, I'm doing this for the good of the country, and that's always the pretext. Right.
Exactly. But so the real estate space is interesting. Things, as we mentioned, are changing. Largely most of the agents are still are having a lot of success, I would say. Now, I think we're seeing a lot of price improvements. We're seeing more open houses. We're seeing a little bit more work to try to get, the price that they want or that the seller is requesting. Sellers are having, we're having to see a little bit of a different conversation that the selling agent is having to have with the sellers, in that they're having to sit back and say, well, now I know this is what you want. Here's what I think we're going to get. And, and I appreciate that you want to still put it at the pinnacle of pricing in terms of how high it is. But here's what I really think it's going to be, because otherwise you are setting yourself up for multiple price improvements to try to attract the right buyer to buy the property. And that's occurring a lot.
Sure. And I think one thing we might bring up too is, like, we had a client recently who wanted to buy a property and he didn't have his money set together. Mm-hmm. He'd never used his VA benefit, and he wanted to use it. Well, VA benefit means the property has to be inspected. There's a whole process to go through. And I kind of said, well, I don't mean to be rude, but you need to go through your process and make sure your money's going to be available, or you're not going to be forward. He said, what do you mean? You're not going to be first on race day.
Right. And the other thing to add to that is I discourage people from just getting locked into only one property. If you're serious about investing into real estate and you really want to do something, there are deals to be had. Don't limit yourself to just that one golden opportunity as to, well, if I don't get that, I'm not going to do anything. And I think that was one of the things with this particular buyer was that I was a little surprised about is this is like, oh, if I don't get this deal, I'm not going to do anything at all. And it's like, no. Let's work out the kinks of things that are going to stop you from the next deal.
Well, you weren't ready for that deal because
right. And that's what that's the whole point of referencing back to what you were just saying is get your ducks in a row and you'll be so much happier at the lake with the other ducks because you'll actually get to participate.
That's right. You get in there and swim.
That's right.
Well, we're here, of course. We hope that you enjoyed the shows, that you gained some information, and that you'll be with us each and every week here on AM 860, The Answer.
Want to talk real estate? Remember, you can reach Stan at 727-423-4794 or on the web at AskMrGreenthumb.com.